Welcome back to the Grade 12 Provincial Winter School Business Studies Paper 1 session. We are now currently busy with question 2. Question 2 focuses on business environments, and the subtopic that we are dealing with is business sectors. Let's get started with the questions. 2.1. Identify the business environment represented by each of the following statements and state the extent to which a business may control each of these environments. Please, learners, remember that we have to focus on the question and the keywords in the question. I will put them on the board now. And remember that our verbs, our cognitive verbs, are also very important. So our cognitive verbs in our question is identify and state. I will highlight that shortly. If we look at question 2.1.1, the employees of Glen Allen Strawberry Farm are regularly absent. So our focus words there are employees and regularly absent. In 2.1.2, the suppliers of quality cakes do not deliver stock on time. Focus word there would be suppliers. And 2.1.3, the buildings of A-Line Catering Services have been destroyed by heavy storms. Our focus words there are heavy storms, which is linked to the physical environment. Now, if we look at our question and the way that we should answer it, remember that our cognitive verbs are very important and tells us how much or how little to answer with, and we have another verb in that question, which is state. Both of these verbs are marked at the end, so no split marks up for grabs. Let's look at question 2.1.1. The employees of Glen Allen Strawberry Farm are regularly absent. So we know that the employees are within the business. And anytime we talk about the business itself, then we know that we are dealing with a micro environment. Then if we look at 2.1.2, our focus word being the suppliers of quality cakes do not deliver stock on time. We know that when we talk about suppliers is the component or one of the components in the market environment. Then we have the next question, 2.1.3, the buildings of A-Line Catering Services have been destroyed by heavy storms. Now, if we know that the physical environment is a component of one of the environments, we know that it comes from the macro environment. Now, learners, you will see that those answers are only 6 marks of the 9 marks that are up for grabs on the board. And so we now also have to make sure that we mention the extent of control. You will see my answer is tabulated or in a table. And the reason we sometimes do this when we represent or present our answers is because it helps us to see that we have answered everything that was asked of us. So usually when you see 2 verbs, there are 2 components to the answer or 2 parts of an answer. And so currently on the left-hand side of the table, only 1 part of the answer is there. And so for the remaining 3 marks, we have to state the extent to which a business can control each of these environments. And all the way back to grade 10 content that was taught to you in term 1, we all know that the microenvironment has full control, or we have full control within the microenvironment. Then the market environment is semi-controllable, and we know that in the macro environment we cannot control the macro environment components. So there's no control there. So please, learners, remember that this is a nice easy question. It's very common in our common papers, and it's a nice easy marks, 9 marks for you to obtain in a paper. Let's look at question 2.2. Tabo Chemicals specialize in manufacturing paint. One of the suppliers' solvents and additives is sometimes out of stock. The manager lacks adequate management skills. The business recently obtained a loan from Cashbank at a high interest rate. Now, before we can answer our questions or even look at our questions, we are going to highlight some important information. First of all, we know that the business name is Tabo Chemicals, and we know that they specialize in manufacturing paint. That looks like important information. Then we know that one of their suppliers' solvents and additives is sometimes out of stock. And that sounds like a problem to the business or for the business. The manager also lacks adequate management skills. That sounds like another problem for the business. We also know that the business recently obtained a loan from Cashbank at a high interest rate. So we know the business obtained a loan, and we know that they did so at a high interest rate. That also sounds like a bit of a challenge. Now we look at our first question. 2.2.1, name the business sector in which TC operates. Motivate your answer by quoting from the scenario. You will notice that there are 2 verbs in the question and 2 parts to the question. Or not 2 verbs, but 2 parts to the question. So the first verb is name the business sector. And then we look at our second part of our question, and that says motivate your answer, and we know that this word quoting is very, very important. Learners, please remember that quoting means to take directly from the scenario. You do not have to answer in your own words, you just take your answer from the scenario. If we look at our answer, we're looking for the business sector, and remember that I highlighted the words manufacturing paint. Remember also that you must name and you must quote from the scenario for your 3 marks. So if we look at our answer for the first part of the question for name the sector, the answer is the secondary sector, and that is for 2 marks. If we can then justify our answer or motivate by quoting, we then know that we use the sentence, Tabo Chemicals specialize in manufacturing paint. You will see, learners, that that has not been summarized and just been taken directly from the scenario. That part of the answer is 1 mark or worth 1 mark, and that will give you a total of 3. Let's look at the next slide. Next question. Still part of 2.2. We know that 2.2.2 says classify TC's challenges according to the 3 business environments. You will see that that part of the question is up for 6 marks. The next question is state the extent of control TC has over each or have over each environment. We know that that part of the question is for 3 marks. So if we look at our answer, you will see that in your booklet you have challenge, and then you have business environment, and then you have extent of control. But the one difference in your booklet is that you have 2.2.1 here, and that part of the answer has already been given. So please take note of the answer on the screen, because you will get a mark for identifying the challenge, as well as linking it to the business environment, and that will give you a total of 6 marks for all your responses, and then you will get 3 marks for the extent of control. Let's look at the first part of the answer. You will see also that it is in a table format, and you will see that usually in your papers they say use the table below as a guide to answer the question. The reason we do that is so that you can clearly see your response, and you then know that you have answered everything that you needed to answer. Remember that classify is split marks, or we give split marks for the verb classify, and then also no split marks is given for this verb state. This is why the classify component part of the answer is in 2 parts of the table, in the first 2 columns. If we look at our challenges that we identify from the scenario, one of the challenges is that one of their suppliers is solvent and additives. One of their suppliers is sometimes out of stock. You'll see that that is taken directly from the scenario. Another challenge, the manager lacks adequate management skills. The business recently obtained a loan from Cash Bank at a high interest rate. Now, remember that we haven't said to directly quote from the scenario, but it won't hurt to do that here with this response. If we look at the business environment, if we look at one of the suppliers as the first challenge, we know that the suppliers is a component of the market environment. If we look at the second answer, the manager lacks adequate management skills, we know that the manager is within the business, and this will then form part of the micro environment. And lastly, we know that the business recently obtained a loan from Cash Bank at a high interest rate, and our focus words there is high interest rate, and we know that we cannot control the interest rate, so that would make this part of the macro environment. The last part of the answer for 2.2.3, you will see the answers are the same as they were in grade 10. The market environment is semi-controllable, the micro environment has full control, and lastly, our macro environment has no control. Grade 12, that is it for question 2. Hopefully that made a little bit of sense, or a lot of sense, and let's get to question 3 in the next part of the videos.